All right. I can share. So, if you all just want to email me any documents that need sharing, I will take care of screen sharing and we can go from there. Community, thank you so much for your patience. I apologize for the headaches. Technology has enhanced the world we live in and also gave us a ton of fun little challenges to navigate. So
You're doing just fine.
thank you. All right. While we are waiting to get everything emailed and get everything shared, have we already done a round of introductions here? Beth, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, not tonight. We didn't.
Yeah, so why don't we just start with everybody going around and introducing themselves?
Okay, I'll jump in. I am Beth McGeorge, the Director of Student Support Services. Brian? Oh, sorry.
I am, I don't know, I wear a lot of hats, but community member. I'm on a bunch of other boards and committees and whatnot, and just here to try and help if there's anything I can do.
Thank you for being
Brenda?
here, Brian.
Yeah, Brenda?
Yeah, I had to unmute. I'm a community member and a former teacher at Mount Abe.
Nice to see you, Brenda. Liz? Oh, she's connecting. How about Kristen?
Hi, Kristen Toy, community member from Starksboro, also school board member, obviously from Starksboro.
Hi, Kristen. Krista? There she is.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. Just tuning in
Hi.
from Bristol, former school board member and interested community member. Here to
Hi,
listen
Krista.
and offer support.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Nice to see you all.
Yeah. Barbara? Nod?
Hello, I'm just a community member.
Hi, Nod. And Liz, and I don't know who's there with Liz. And Floyd, are you in the library? Oh, there's Ashley.
I am, and I'm trying to get this emailed over to Meredith right now, so we have some screen sharing. And I think we're about to have a little bit more library on Liz's computer.
Okay.
And who all do we have in the library today?
I don't think they can hear us.
Oh, no.
Liz, can you hear us?
That's
Oh,
better.
Oh, there they are.
You want me to?
If you go off, I'll use this one. Or no, stay on Zoom, just turn your volume off. We would like to introduce ourselves as well. So can I just forward you? Okay,
Yeah.
first I'm Liz Sayre, I'm from Bristol. Thank you everybody for coming. We'll get this presentation up and going and then hopefully have a chance to share our thoughts. Thank you. And we will have a chance to share out our thoughts. Next.
Ashley Bassett, I'm from New Haven. Lisa Drinkwine, I'm from Starksboro. Haley Lane Gordon from Moncton. Katie Gill from Starksboro. Barb Crandall from Moncton.
Nice to meet you all.
I'm unable to find Meredith's email.
All right, give me one second. I will type it in chat. Just meredith.rosignol@mausd. .org, excuse me. And I don't know if I introduced myself. My name is Meredith. I am the newest school board representative from Bristol.
Blank, if you give me your, I can text it to you right now. That's not good. There's just a whole slew of people trying to get in. Right, so can I just text it? That's the best I can do right now.
that's fine.
Okay. So what's your phone number?
989 603.
Wait.
Ah,
One thing I will do tonight, I know that you all saw this invitation. So we do have an online version of the survey that hits all the questions we're hoping to discuss well tonight. And so if you would consider, I will put it in chat, the link to the survey. And I would love to hear your thoughts and bring them back to the board at the next meeting. The presentation we're going to go through tonight kind of just sets the stage of where we are in the budget process right now. But I am hoping that there's still a lot of thoughts and feelings and knowledge that was gained this spring that you can share with us where you are right now and your thoughts on moving forward as a district. So I will put that survey link into chat right now.
Thanks, everyone. Looks like we have a few additional participants joining us. It is great to see you. Floyd, how can I help?
Good. I think I'm almost there.
Amazing.
We'll see.
Yay! We got it. Round of applause for Floyd. Thank you so much, Floyd, for your patience and for setting everything up. So grateful to you for driving this, and take it away.
Perfect.
Okay.
We're gonna get echo right. I don't know if you should turn off and I turn on, Liz. Is that better? Can you hear me online?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. All right, so we're gonna dive into the budget presentation that we shared in October to give us a base to start from. And it's just gonna be fairly quick, and then we can go back and revisit. Following this, we'll spend some time talking about budget drivers and where we are in the process currently. What's new for this year's budget? The excess spending penalty has come back. That means that we are subject to having to pay excess taxes when we spend excess money above the amount that the state has allowed us to spend. It's a formula based on the state average plus a multiplier of 18% and then an added spending from the New England economic group that gives us another inflator. It's estimated to be around $16,000 a year, $16,000 for fiscal year 26. Payments for bonds secured after July 1st will no longer count against allow us to reduce our spending per pupil. And additionally, capital reserve funds older than 5 years count towards our cost per pupil. For us here at Mount Abe, we have about $240,000 that has aged to that point where it's it's going to hit that penalty. That 240 isn't a number that pushes us over the threshold with any of our current estimates. And next year, with additional money hitting that, we expect it will go over. What that means is you're going to hear us talk about spending money out of our capital reserve, specifically to avoid double taxation on it. And we can spend it and then work to gain a fund balance in the current year, which we can then replenish the capital reserve, allowing us to start the time clock over for another 5 years. It gets a little wonky, but it's the structure that we have currently. What's new for the budget? Still, the tax calculation formula, it used to just be spending per person, per pupil, divided by our yield, times our town CLA. It's now adding another CLA on a statewide basis, and then a town CLA. So it's taking the CLA as a whole that we've known in the past and turning it into two separate, that's much better, turning it into two separate CLA computations, one for the state, one for our local. It brings the pre-CLA tax rate closer to the post-tax rate. For example, in Bristol, our tax rate of 7,217, or our CLA of 7,217 is divided by our state formula of 0.766, and it all brings us to pretty much the same number with a different factoring in. It's a computation to move the CLA from a local impact to a state impact, and then layering the local impact on top of it. It's an additional computation that doesn't really change the end number. It just changes it in terms of how it's seen across the state. We're still waiting for some info around the income sensitized formula. We're going to change our ballot language a little bit. And now let's talk about what do we have? Well, we have enrollment, and it's important to remember and to note that our local taxes are driven by an long-term weighted average daily membership, which is taking our enrollment, weighting it based on the factors as developed by the state. So these numbers, enrollment, are really what drive our tax rate. The higher the enrollment, the lower the cost per pupil. The lower the cost per pupil, the lower the tax rate. I'm going to kind of bump through these. We talk about elementary school class sizes, average sizes across the district, guidelines, what the minimum average is, what the maximum average is. And we talk a little bit about where we are. We have an average currently in our elementary class sizes of around 16 students per classroom. We need 35 classrooms to serve those kids. Should we increase our average per class to 18, we would reduce by 4 classrooms in this. That's a $300,000 to $500,000 savings. We show you this just to give you a sense of the financial impact of elementary class size. Adding 2 kids to our average is going to save us somewhere between 300 and 500, going from 16 to 22 to give you a wider view of what the impact could be. We would drop to a need of 26 classrooms and a savings of up to $1 million. I'm happy to, what would you like to do? I'm happy to let's dive into questions on the fly.
Changing, it seems to me like changing those class size dynamics would be very tricky because Beeman or Robinson at about 90 kids, it'd be maybe like a 3, 4, 5, or just.
So I hear what you're describing is kind of the Ripken model right? Think about that really small school where they're looking at a K 1, 2, 3 or a K 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is absolutely possible that we would have that kind of a structure. And this is less about, don't take this as we're directing that this is the direction we want to go. We're just trying to show that class size is fiscally impactful, right?
Having one-on-one with children. You're gonna increase the class size, but there'll still be multiple children meeting one-on-one.
Well, there wouldn't be any change to the need of the student, right? That's not what we're looking to figure how to create greater economies of scale. If a student needs a one-on-one, the student gets a one-on-one. That is always been the case, depending on who thinks you should have a one-on-one, right? You know, there's multiple lenses on that, but in an IEP where it's been team decided, this is what this student needs, that's not going to change based on class sizes. Well, the savings is really, think about it simply. If you have 35 classrooms and you go to 31, that's 4 teaching positions at $100,000 to $140,000 per teacher. That's where the savings comes from. It's none of the other costs. It's only that. That is really pretty much, you can look at it in that lens. We don't need as many teachers in these models. I'm not saying we don't need what we have. I'm just saying this is the financial impact of elementary class size. And it's something that on a statewide basis, they're looking at. You know, we talk about here's the minimums or here's the maximums, but we don't talk about the minimums, right? I would say that nobody is going to say, well, let's get to classroom sizes of 2. We do.
Sorry to interrupt. For those that are in the library, we online, we can't hear what the questions are. Floyd, is it possible that you could repeat what the question is before answering it?
Happily.
Thank you.
So that last question was about whether or not there's an average top number that we can go to. And we do have that as a district that we try not to exceed that average, that number in a classroom.
Is that top number based on their, like, so a lot of schools in our district have multi-age, we have like kids before. Is that based on a homeroom or when they divide up for math and literacy?
Well, it depends what you're talking about. If you're talking about a homeroom and then moving in the middle school.
No, so like, my kids are home, so 5th grade math is taught by one person. So all 5th graders go to that room. The 6th grade math is taught by the other teacher. They all go to that room. So if we have, you know, I'm being ridiculous, 60 5th graders, that means all 60 5th graders would be in that one room for math. So
choice the school decides.
So, and I guess that's my question is,
If the school says we care more about straight grade than we do about how many kids are in this class, that has to be, that's.
so I guess I'm wondering where the number on that other slide was coming from with maximum class sizes. Because it's making it sound like it's a requirement and like it's a
Hard
true
number.
hard number. But what I'm seeing is that that's not a hard number. It might be a hard number in the class they take the room they take attendance in, but not where they're having
Actual
math or literacy. So, and I know like this is all like things to consider, but I can see that as a challenge to have too many kids per teacher in core subjects, well, all subjects, but in core subjects that we're then going to test them on and, you know, do funding on and things like that. So it just gets a little muddy, I think.
So the question that's bouncing around right now is around a school-wide fifth grade math class that might exceed the maximum average for grade 4 of 25. That's a little outside of my expertise as a business manager in terms of the curriculum and director of that. But I think it's a question well asked and well intended, and one that we can address going forward.
Lloyd, I think Brenda is trying to raise her hand.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to comment, you can put any number of students in a classroom, but once you do, you change the way that they are taught. I mean, I grew up in Proctor, and even though it's a small school, when I was in the grade school, we had 35 kids with one teacher. We learned out of workbooks. We had reading groups of 10 where we repeated the same thing over and over. We had coloring on Friday, not real art, nothing like science, nothing inquiring. And that's what you can do with a large group. You get a smaller group, you can individualize it. It's what what we in the district want for our children. How do we envision the learning of the children? And then that's where I would think you would figure out how many people you can put in a classroom.
Perfect. Well, I'm gonna move us forward because where we're in now is we're pretty much heading into the weeds of what do we do, as opposed to where are we and what are the options, which is where we're trying to jump off from. And these classroom sizes, average class sizes, are really just to give you some guidelines to show you where we are currently and what the financial impact is on that. Same thing on the financial impact middle and high school. You can have we currently have a 15 students average in each class. We need 41 teachers to do that. If we move that from 15 to 18, it would be 35 teachers. It's a $500,000 to $700,000 savings. Again, this isn't driving us to let's make our class sizes as big as we can to save money, but it is one of the drivers when 60-something% of our budget is staff. So
I just wanted to suggest that the weeds are important. The weeds are really where you begin, because then that's where you figure out, your parameters that you can change for the numbers in the classroom, the number of teachers, what sorts of teachers you want, and that sort of thing. That's all.
Oh, no question. It's certainly within the last few weeks, as a financial team, leadership team, we have well dove into the weeds. We're looking at line items that are $1,000 and seeing if we can reduce those by $400 or $500. So the weeds are really the important piece, and you need to have a high level understanding of what your big drivers are, and then you can look at those and then look at the weed piece as well from a cost standpoint. Moving along. Our spending per long-term weighted average daily membership. That's a long mouthful to say our cost per pupil. And we're anticipating in October that we were going to total expense of about $36.5 million. We generate almost $7 million in revenue in different streams, leaving us an ed spending of $29.6. A long-term weighted average dropping that's our long-term weighted average pupils dropping from last year, just because we're as the rest of the state, we are also in the world of losing students, which would push a spending per pupil of $15,065 per student, roughly $739 per student more than last year, a 5% increase. In this average, what does that do to your taxes? A projected tax rate before CLA, the homestead tax rate would go from a $1.42, 1.4264 cents here across the district to 150.29, a 7.65 cent increase, 5.4. That's not where it gets painful. Where it gets painful is where you take that homestead tax rate and apply it with the CLA. And now we're looking at a 26-cent raise in Bristol. Moncton and Starksboro substantially less, but remember, both Moncton and Starksboro's values of their property are substantially higher than Bristol and New Haven. We're confident that Bristol and New Haven will not reappraise for this tax year. We think it will be in place for 27. So those numbers, that 223 versus 136, you'll see those line up closer when there's a reappraisal in Bristol and New Haven. And your cost per thousand is going to drop drastically, but your value of your home is going to increase undeniably painfully, generally speaking. So all this to say, what's the impact? Change per $100,000 of value for those two towns that have not been reappraised, $250, $260 per 100,000. For those that have been, 120, 105. This presentation was before the board set our target. So the numbers that you're going to see next week will be different than this. We have some of those, but we're not sharing them tonight. It's not really prudent to put this out publicly before the board has an opportunity to review it. Yes, please. Yes. We have on this number back here, the 36,000, we're only increasing our top line spending by 2.95%. What does that reflect? Well, it reflects a 12% increase in our medical insurance. It reflects an average of 7% across the board for salaries. It reflects a 4% placeholder for inflation on most other items. And it reflects as much of the hard scrubbing inside the budgets that we could do to this point. And then we have the board setting a target rate of no more than a 6% increase in any of our most impacted town, which in all of our estimates is Bristol. But so no more than 6%. In order to achieve that, we have to spend less money than fiscal year 25 and absorb the 12% medical insurance, the salary increase, and inflation. We're hoping for a warm winter next year. But that's the reality, right? We know that to get to a number of 6% on the heels of what the increase was last year, the board has, I would say, hopeful confidence that a 6% increase is something that our community would be willing to consider, knowing that we've reduced our total spending below our current year's total spending. That's a great question. We're just embarking on those, and our expectation is that the negotiations aren't going to end with a flat line on salaries for the professional staff. There's a placeholder in there with the best guess that we could make. And prudence would say we're better served to not share that currently. I think Chris has got a question, and then Chris.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Floyd.
Lisa, how are you?
Oh, hanging in. Good
Good.
to see you all. So it sounds like the board set a target, and so the FY 26 numbers are not really probably where you'll land. You're looking at trying to bring in numbers that are lower than FY 25. Well, at some point, will you be sharing with folks what your thoughts are on the options for making those cuts? And will there be a chance for folks to weigh in on how they might prioritize what those options are?
I think that's the goal is
Or
for next week at the board meeting, when we're presenting what the budget might look like and how we achieve a $1.8 million cut from the number you're looking at today.
That's 1.8 is what
That would be the number to get us to 6%, yeah. And that's still holding all the assumptions on yield, on ADM. I mean, there are a host of assumptions in there. I was just at a meeting this weekend or last Friday talking about what the expectation for the Career Center increase is going to be. And it's substantial, on the heels of a substantial increase last year. And we have limited, not limited, we have no opportunity to negotiate that price, right? It is a cost that the Career Center sets their tuition, and our kids that go there, we pay that. And it's a number in excess of our spending per pupil by a third or more, right? So that's an impactful number in terms of driving our total expenses.
and
those are gonna
just
be
a follow-up, I guess, would be, do you have a sense of whether this state is going to offer any assistance in not having to cut 1.8?
I'll leave that hanging there because I think we all know where the state is, right? The legislature and the governor are busy pointing their fingers that we're overspending. And I would argue that there's a lot of unfunded items that have been added to our budget over these last 5 years that impact our spending, one, and there's a lot of expenses that have been included in the ed fund that pull money out for items other than education or direct education. All that to say that December 15th, we're anticipating a report from the commission that has been set up to look at both long-term and short-term ways that we might be able to control costs, increase the yield, lower spending, or increase revenue. All of those things are on the table on the state side, and those levers will be just as impactful to talk about when they come out, right? It will be, some people agree with some of these things with enthusiasm and will disagree with other things on that with just as big of a degree of enthusiasm. So we'll look to see where they come with that and to see if that offers any relief for our district. My expectation is it will be more and less impactful to different districts across the state.
Nod, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, it sounds like the across the board raises will be 7% and the increase in the budget will be 6%. So it looks like they're covered, but people in the community, the cost of living increase for somebody retired and on Social Security, the estimated cost of living increase this year is going to be 2.5%. So where are they supposed to come up with the other 4.5?
Well, I think that's really a great question. And that's where the income sensitivity piece comes in, right? We're not clear currently on how that will be impacted. Last year, the legislature and the governor put an additional 13% into that fund to help offset the impact for our income sensitized community members. Currently, that stands at about 60% of our taxpayers. So your question is spot on when you're looking at what might seem like a responsible 6% increase. Well, it may be really a difficult net loss to someone who's only seeing a 3% increase in their income. You're exactly
right. I mean, if you're getting a 7% increase and the taxes only go up 6%, you're covered.
Well, we're not really getting a 6% increase. We're increasing our spending by, we're actually going to be decreasing our spending to have a 6% increase. So when it seems like we might be covered, well, we have to find $1.8 million to get down to a 6% tax increase.
No, I'm saying
reduced from our current budget.
I'm saying someone who gets a 7% raise, like everybody across the board gets, but your taxes are only going up 6%, they're covered because their raise covers the cost of that increase.
The individuals, I got it, right. Outside of so if you're a staff member who lives in the 4 towns and you're receiving that average increase, it offsets your gross number on the tax increase. Got it. Please. Mm. I think the math on it across the board brings us to the exact same number. What it does is it changes the yield. So the state number doesn't look as impactful from a CLA standpoint. It's really, I think, in simple terms, the political impact of the CLA impact, the way to quiet that a little is to have 2 CLAs, one that is for the town and one that is statewide. I look at it as the same pair of pants.
For like what the state's going to add. Will this give us that information before we vote in March? So I feel like we don't always get all the information. Like when I look at your charts, I'm like, okay, that's gonna be, I don't know, $30 on my tax bill. Okay, I can swallow that. Okay. But then when my tax bill comes, I'm like, why is that $80 on the education or, whatever. So it never feels like it's equal to what I voted for. And I wasn't sure if that kind of was to quiet that a little bit.
I think it's more about, less about quieting it, more than not having the community blaming the legislature or the CLA, and more looking at it brings the impact greater to the spending, because you have to get your spending down for the first CLA threshold to then have the second CLA threshold, and recognize that the CLA is set in December. The impact is what happens when the yield is finally finished, as it was this year in June, right? So we're voting on an estimate and have always voted on an estimate. And for someone who lives with numbers to feel like a $30 or a $70 per thousand difference, it's hard. It's hard for me to say, here's our estimate, and we don't really have a control until the state sets, the governor sets the yield. The state sets the yield, the governor signs the bill, and the tax bills come out.
Are they averaged? Are they?
So you take a value of your home and you divide it by the statewide CLA, which they're estimating it's 0.766 to get a new value of your home, effectively, of the real estate value in the community. That number is then divided by the local number. We'll have that number in December. And we've got a 5%, a 5-point hit in our CLA currently, assuming that every town is going to have a 5-point change to their CLA. So we've built in a reasonable cushion, said the guy from his chair trying to pull numbers out of his sock, right? I mean, truly, that's the, I don't think we're too high. I don't think we're too low. And I promise you, we're not exact. It was the most reasonable number that we could pull, given some kind of an allocation based on what were we before the volatility of COVID, and are we at the end of COVID so we can soften that volatility in our values a little bit, right? It's certainly not a science, and it doesn't feel like art.
So I think I'd like to just open up a little here. This evening is meant to be an opportunity to really ask some good questions about budget, drivers, challenges, and hopefully opportunities. So I'd like to make sure everybody gets the chance to understand and ask all the questions, since we have Floyd here, knowing the best that we can right now. And it is early in the budget season relative to January. So if we, if you really could, every survey answer will be read and recorded and shown in summary to the board, the ideas that come through, because we need to know, like, the questions that are being asked tonight, for instance, right? Understanding, an understanding of the drivers and the challenges that are coming up in people's minds as you're asking questions and saying, okay, so class sizes drive the budget, for instance. What questions come up for you with that? And the third piece here is opportunity. So when you step back and you look at all of these drivers and we think about what's most important for us to prioritize for our students, how does that work together? How do you see an opportunity in that to not just sit and wait to see what the commission comes up with? That us as a community, we've been doing this work. It is not forgotten, everything that's been said and shared and concerns over the years. It's growing and continuing that work. So I apologize for not being as coordinated tonight as it should have been. There will be more regular opportunities to keep thinking through this as a community, because it's not something that affects just one or two people. It's all of us in all of our towns are affected by this. So I look forward to hearing your feedback. I hope there's some more questions. If we want to do some breakout groups, maybe Meredith could set us up and we could try answering a couple of the questions together. This is just an extra special opportunity with Floyd to really understand the drivers. And I
You wanna
see,
look at I've got in the presentation a slide that has the drivers kind of broken out And when we get that information, would that be helpful?
Yes, and then I do see that there's a hand up too. Meredith, if you could keep calling on people in Zoom, that would be great. Thank you. Appreciate your help.
Brian, your hand's been up for a little while.
Nobody, pardon my, forgive my ignorance, since I'm new to trying to learn some of this stuff. So it sounds like the goal is there's $1 million plus that needs to be cut off the budget. And one of the biggest drivers would be staff. Is that, we know, is there an estimate of how much other areas is going to come down, if that's going to be the base one? Because it sounds like a goal of trying to find the sweet spot between, looks like some staff might have to go, but we don't want with the least impact to the students' education. Is my understanding kind of fair on that?
Yes,
Okay.
that's fair. Least impact on students. Access to programming, right? Like, what do we want for our kiddos?
Okay.
So I'll jump into this, our budget driver. And before we look at it, I'll peel back the onion a little bit. I've worked directly with Patrick now for more than 5 years, and I've yet to have a time or an instance where we were looking at financial items where Patrick's first and focused direction is, how will this impact students, right? So understand that the guys who is in charge of the money works directly with someone who is fully and completely focused on what's best for students in his decision making. And I think that's important. You know, it's important to say that and to know that someone who works with them daily on all of these items, that is a consistent question of his. So what are the drivers? Let's now that I've kind of wanted to set that stage, that as we go through these things, you know, Brian's question about cutting staff, we're going to do everything we can to not cut staff. We're going to do everything we can to take advantage of attrition in areas that are perhaps overstaffed a little bit, or we can realign, or we can make this change, or the everything that we can possibly do. Heck, we have a food service teammate who is leaving employment, and we're looking hard at that position. Do we really need to replace that, right? And part of me, you think about it and you scratch your head and go, well, of course we need 2 people at the elementary school to serve lunch for all of those students. And we're still going to evaluate those positions, each one individually, to determine if it's a possible opportunity that we can take advantage of to be the least impactful to our student body that we possibly can. So ADM, our average daily membership, is probably the greatest driver. The more students we have, the lower cost per student. The lower the cost per student, the lower the tax rate. So when do we start finding this out? Well, we've been giving the state our attendance records in September. They start putting those together to put a pupil count. They weight it based on poverty, based on scarcity, based on English language learners, based on size of the schools, all of those things, and it comes back as an LTW-ADM, long-term weighted average daily membership, that we then use as our denominator as we divide. There's historically a number of versions of this. We've seen 3, I've seen 7. Additionally, a spending threshold will be set. That has been gone for a few years. It's coming back this year. I mentioned it earlier. We're not really concerned that we're going to come up against that, but that is a driver. Certainly a driver for some of our neighbors that are coming up tight on that. Medical insurance increase. That request has been made. We know what that request is. That approval happens in January. So we're in a state of flux to some degree. We've got that 11.9% placeholder in there, and it hasn't yet been approved by the DRB, the review board. And that will happen in January. On the December 1st, tax commissioner letter sets a yield projection, which is what they expect each tax dollar So each $1 tax per thousand of your value of your 100,000 of your value of your home, what's that going to yield in the state, which then gives us a number to back into to allow us to figure out what our tax rate is. That yield is a moving target and won't be set until all of the budgets have been voted on. That's when it sets, which is why we don't have a final tax number until very close to the end of the year. Tech Center FTEs, that's the number of students that we have at the Tech Center. That will come from the state on the 31st of January. CLAs will be released at the end of December. That will be impactful. Tuition projections come in January. That's ours going out to other schools and any that we might receive. We get a SPED extraordinary reimbursement. That is a huge budget driver that we don't see until the end of the year. Transportation, we know that that's going to be impactful to our budget. It's getting more expensive every year. We have taken steps to partner with the other Addison County districts, Addison Central, Middlebury, and Addison Northwest, Virgins, and we have a contract for the three of us that gave us a little more horsepower in terms of our ability to negotiate. Our COVID and ESSER funds are expiring. You know, I think we just, on the HVAC projects here and at Beaman that were funded under the ESSER funds, just finished, and we billed those out on October 30th. And those are not available for us in this next budget build. So those are the really simple drivers. And now what's the budget building process here in Vermont, right? What do we do? Step it down from where we are now. What are our current expenditures? Our salary and benefits are about 22 million of the 35 million budgeted expenditures, 63%. Yeah.
Let me know if this is correct, that the health insurance for school district folk is all negotiated on the state level. And so that is not a district decision, that is a state level decision for all school employees.
Imposed number.
An
we get
imposed
what we
number.
get, yeah.
As well as the retirement contributions and expectations.
Not negotiable.
Right, okay, thank you.
And has multiple layers to it, you know, in terms of how that is funded, right? There was a question not long ago about why is so much money going into the special ed director's retirement? And it was a misunderstanding of how the state has looked at federal special ed money and said, we're going to take more of it out of the grant and put it into the retirement fund because the retirement fund's underwater. And what it looked like to the public was individuals were getting a big kicker on their retirement. That's not how it works. The money just is being sucked out of the grant and put in under that contribution level to fully to attempt to bring the retirement funds into a little bit better position financially. You're hearing it all the time that our state retirement funds are substantially underwater. An interesting aside, New Hampshire's are not. They invested in real estate. Maybe based on the appreciation we're all seeing in our properties, maybe there's something to be said about that. So we're going to review staffing in our current year. What's the need? We roll it forward. The CBA's assumptions, projected benefit costs, all in that part. Apply the inflationary factors to the other expenses. We review our anticipated revenue. What are we expecting to see come in? You know, we're guessing today how many Lincoln students are going to come next fall. And we were a little high last year. 2 years ago, we were a little low. We're hoping to split that a little closer for this next one. What do we use as a threshold for our number? In years past, we've used the spending threshold, do not exceed that. Should we be looking at another benchmark, right? Our board said, here's your benchmark, no more than a 6% increase in taxes to any of our towns. That's what we're looking at for our benchmark. And back to the LTW ADM, the higher the number is, the more students we have in our community, the lower the tax will be because our cost per student is lower and our numbers are going down. And it's just what it is. And then finally, I'm going to end with this. What can we control? What can we not control? We can control our top line expenditures, understanding that staffing is 63% of it, and we're not going to save a lot of money if we turn the heat down 1 degree. But we will save some, and we will look to do it. And we have some great controls that say, nobody's in this room, turn the heat down. Somebody's in that room, turn the heat up. So we do work hard to find those nickels. We can control our classroom size. And should we? That's a community conversation, right? And we talked about it a little bit earlier to see what that impact is, how impactful that is. Factors that are not in our control, the yield is not in our control. The yield is determined based on the spending as a state. So bear in mind that our taxes here are helping to build the new Burlington High School building. Student count, not really in our control. You know, we can do the things we can do, control the controllables. We can work to improve our schools, make them inviting, invest in good infrastructure, and make our district a destination for people who are looking for a home and a place to raise their families. We can do that, but that's about all we can do. We don't have any control on how the students are weighted, right? We don't control that. The state negotiates the medical benefits. That's negotiated well above us. We can't control our voters, right? All we can say is, we've heard you. We're doing all we can to control our costs. If we're looking at a 3% decrease in our spending from last year, to get to a 6% increase in your taxes, that's painful. We recognize that. But we're also trying to thread the needle of not impacting our students or impacting them in ways that are the least impactful. We can't control the CLA. Now, everybody wants their property values to go up except for when the tax bill comes out, right? And we can't control specific positions in terms of how we might take advantage of attrition. Somebody who decides to leave, we can't control who those people are. If we have to go to a RIF where we're reducing our team, we can't necessarily control who leaves. We can control the lowest ones, the newest teammates, but it is difficult. If you can take advantage of attrition and you have a retirement of a higher compensated teammate, that could be 1.5 of our newer teammates in terms of total compensation. And all of that gets factored in over the course of the next few months with the best guess on who might retire and who might not. Because we also don't have contracts renewed until after the budget is set. So we kind of outside of our control there, not kind of, outside of our control. And that wraps up my end. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to stop talking if you've heard enough of me.
Lloyd, that was so
Have
helpful.
we offered retirement buyouts to our more senior staff members in the last?
We have in previous years. We've had some success with that. We've also had some years where it cost us substantially more money to buy out contracts, where it did not create a positive impact. Because if you offer it, you don't get to pick who takes it. So if you offer it and you still need a 3rd grade teacher, and you hire the best candidate you find, you may end up paying as much or more than the person who took advantage of the buyout, and now you're paying the buyout. That has happened. The board has voted this year not to offer that this year. We think that going forward, that holding that as an option for the board when we have what might be even more difficult budget times out in front of us is a prudent way to go. So that was question one.
Floyd, I see that Nod has his hand up.
Much more about the collaboration between the high school and Virgins High School in offering some additional courses next year. What does the budget impact of that collaboration look like?
It's a great question. And I think not working in the curriculum side, I'm going to be really careful in that. My sense is that the savings won't be great in that small micro view of it, right? You know, if you're just saying, hey, let's share this class between the two, you've got to transport kids, you've got costs. It will be interesting to see how that sugars out. But my sense is to see that as the $1.8 million, not there. You know, we're talking 5 figures at most, 10 to 100 tops. I don't think we see any more than, we won't see anywhere near $100,000 in savings.
If I can remember, I think the other side of it is it's going to offer a lot of opportunities without a large cost.
That's the
Yeah,
bigger piece,
absolutely.
right?
Well, that's
Yeah.
what I was wondering,
Right.
like, where
So-
does that fall in?
So
in
if you're
all
only
of that?
looking at the cost, we're not saving much. But if you're looking at the benefit, we're able to offer a substantially wider curriculum without having to add costs.
So I'm excited about
Yeah.
it.
And we look at a lot of things. I mean, before we hired our new facilities director, we looked hard with combining with Addison Northwest to see if we could hire one between the two of us. There's just too many roadblocks as we're structured now with the different budgets, and we couldn't find that path forward to work. And yet we went without a facilities director for 3 months while we spent some time trying to figure out if we could. So we saved a few dollars.
Floyd, I hate to interrupt here, but Nod has had his hand up for a while, and I just want to make
Thinking
sure that
about
question
we
gets
don't have
answered.
all positions filled by people physically in our buildings. There are some online services for students. Is that a more expensive route or a more economical route to like contract with online people for services?
I think it depends on the who and the what.
Okay.
Right? You know, there are items that we'll save money on, and there are items that we will spend substantially more money on. And at the end of the day, what does the student need? And the cost of that is secondary. You know, we had a conversation with the legislature team from Madison County, and we were talking about the cost of some outplacement, right? Students that aren't going to thrive in the environment that we have, and we're placing them off in a residential capacity, and that cost and the impact of that. And the legislature team kind of scratched their head going, well, hopefully we're not making decisions based on the cost, to which we can say with great confidence that the cost of the program is never on the front line with the IEP team. That's up to Patrick, Floyd, Katrina, Beth to figure out how do we pay for that, and recognize that one of our cohorts have 2 students costing almost $800,000 a year, 2 students. And nobody says we shouldn't be taking care of those 2 students, and recognize it's unbelievably impactful. And the conversation with the legislature was, at what point do we move from education expense to more of a mental health expense or an AHS expense and look for reimbursement there? that's the question that we're pushing to the commission and we're pushing to legislature, saying, if you really want to control costs, don't charge us, don't force us into having to not spend, the money should be spent. That's not the question. Don't bring it as an education expense to pay for room and board, to pay for all of those other services that are going to make education as robust as it can for every one of those kids. But let's put it in the bucket it belongs, right? If we're going to talk about education costs and the general public looks at it and goes, well, we're spending this much money, but you can reduce your cost per student. If you have 1,000 students, $1 million, it's $1,000 per student for those costs that are going out that you could reduce your cost per student by if you just paid for it over in the bucket where it probably should live, an AHS type of bucket. How will that come out? It's not going to be easy, but it's important to recognize that those costs are there. Those students deserve to have the services they're receiving. We're going to pay for them, and we're going to stand here with our feet in the fire defending the fact that it costs a lot per student, because that's the way the law is structured. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I was thinking, talking about, we don't have control over our student count. We can, but I also think we should also think about our communities as a bigger picture of, and trying to entice staff and people with qualifications that we need to come live and work here. And I think that, just housing alone around the entire state makes it impossible for a new grad to want to stick around and have a job here, because where are they going to live? Where are they going, there's just too many barriers.
You only live with mom and dad for so long.
I have a question.
When we were talking about buying the central office, and the Bristol Police Department rents a piece of that. And Patrick was saying, we could turn that into an apartment to house a teacher that can't find housing for a temporary window of time. And solve a little bit of that problem. Not an option for us currently, but it was certainly outside the box thinking of how can we use resources that we have to solve the problems that we can on a micro level. And if we create an environment that statewide, everybody did this for one person, the pressure off the housing market would be impactful.
They said that they like the slide about what we do have control of and what we don't. It would be interesting if there was a slide for what we can cut and we can't. And I think this factors of control kind of hits that, but maybe something more in depth that explains where our detailed fixed expenses are living, more detail on that.
Sure. To chat about that now or to
Just
pull that out in the future.
Just
I
a
think-
suggestion. I think it's a lot to get into probably.
We're deep in the
Right
weeds
now,
when you
but
start looking
yeah.
at those items. And
Hey,
so much
Floyd?
of the items that we carry are statutory or safety, right? You know, we have a really tight central office. I think the public sees us as being bloated in a central office. We're a $40 million company with one accountant. Go ahead and pick any company that you can think of that does $40 million of expenditures and does it with one accountant. Tammy Crossman is spectacular. And we only have one accountant. Our checks and balances are me. Right? So if I'm a community member, if I'm a board member saying I'm signing off on these warrants, if you're a company that's making widgets and you're doing $40 million of sales, you got more than one accountant. You have more than one HR person, you have more than one accounts payable person, you have more than one payroll person with 300 employees, plus an ever-changing ELP program that is consistently adding new and exciting people to put new and exciting programs out for our kids. Well, every one of those, every 8 weeks, it's 6 to 12 new employees added into the system and taken out every cycle. So our robustness of payroll is fairly strong. We're not a static company that has this many employees and we pay them the same amount every week and we're done. It is a consistent, constant change.
Hey, Floyd,
How do we share that in a way that says, here are some fixed costs that we probably don't want to reduce, right? I certainly don't want to go to no accountants. We got more people on.
can somebody in Mount Abe confirm that you can hear all of us online, please?
Not hearing.
Okay. You can? Okay, great. There are some people online that have had their hands up for a little while. So Nod, I think you raised your hand first, and then Shannon, we would love to hear from you too.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could go down to, I think it was slide 20. You just moved the presentation, so I can't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't think you showed slide 20. So this
Sure.
is if we had a tax increase of those percentages, this is what the spending would be. Is that what I'm reading?
So to
If you
make
had
it
it-
really simple, yes. So if we take and we say we want 0% tax
Uh-huh.
increase, we need
Yeah.
to take $3.4 million out of our top line spending.
Which would be about 30 teachers, right?
Probably about that.
Right. Okay, so I'm just trying to, like I said, Social Security 2.5%. You would have to. All right, it'd be in between 2 and 4 somewhere.
Yep.
Shannon, did you have a question?
I did. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you great.
Sweet. So I'm not sure if this is a proper part, but I did hear some discussion about like the central office and how many people. And Floyd, you just referred to that as, you know, it's tight. You feel like you have as many people as you can spare, but I remember hearing at the end of last year that there's about 26 people working out of that office. And my main hesitation, even in hearing this whole presentation, is that we're discussing cutting teachers right away when, I mean, perhaps it just hasn't been looked at here tonight, but I don't personally feel like, from what I've followed and from what I've seen, any of the notes that we've discussed, eliminating that office and putting consolidating offices maybe in the buildings we already have, like, you know, making an apartment if we were to buy that is a very sweet thought, but it's just not, you know, if our main focus is the student, then I feel like I haven't seen that looked at a whole awful lot. Eliminating renting that space and putting the people back in the buildings we already have, I mean.
I think those are great points, Shannon, and recognize that we did look at combining all of the central office functions with Addison Northwest in a consolidation structure, and that was a hard no from the community. And recognize that moving central office into one of the buildings sounds like a really simple move, but recognize that the quote we got to do that was the least expensive was 1.2 million. and a $500,000 on top of it for the HVAC, which we were able to accomplish under the ESSER money at Beaman for that least expensive one. And I think it's important to note, we use the word teachers. You often hear that, but really don't think teachers, think staff, teammates. We don't look at it as how do we cut 30 teachers. We look at it as to reduce our staff by 30 and still deliver the services that our students need. It's not any one bucket. It will be across everyone, right? You know.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I just, in
I think
looking,
it's important to, I want to just catch one thing. You threw out a number of 46 people in the central office, 36?
26, I think, was the number last year.
All right, we have 13 people in the central office. Right, so that number may be other central office staff, right? We have to classify some teammates as central office simply because they could be in any number of different roles. Their office might be on the 3rd floor at Beaman. It might be moving from school to school, but their central office support staff of a number of different kinds that you can't allocate directly to any one particular school. So I think it's important to recognize that there's two central office views. One is the team that runs the financial and administrative duties of the district, and then the other is teammates that aren't classified to one particular place that are just carried under a central office umbrella, and then allocated at the end of the year if that's appropriate. I mean, we have certain reporting in the way that we carry our staff that's required by the state and how we classify them. So that may not match up with the way the public sees it, but it's important to note that we run the district with one payroll, one HR, one superintendent, one curriculum assistant superintendent, one SPED director, some assistants to help make that work and to process it, one accounts payable, one payroll person, one facilities person, one business manager.
I think the point you're trying to make is that some positions are fluid in terms of where they actually are. They're not all in that one
Correct.
spot.
And,
Yes.
and we can look at it in another way. Our medical insurance carries an HRA, right? And we need to budget that somewhere. And it comes in central office administration, and it's $520,000. And it really gets spread out over every single one of our teammates from an allocation. But from a budget standpoint, it's $500,000 that sits in that line that you scratch your head and go, why is this such a big number? What's in there? Well, $500,000 is a big number, and we have to carry it somewhere. And that's where we carry it, and the state supports it as that's the place where it should be, so that when they're bundling everybody across the state to get the total budget numbers and where they're spent, that it's as apples to an apples roll up as they can get. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does make sense. You made excellent points also. Thank you. I'm just, my concerns are things like if we're subcontracting people to cut the grass, or like if we're starting to look at some of the like management of what we already have, right? Instead of, trying to think of not renting the central office, have we actually done that do you have a breakdown of what that might look like to disperse people? Have we ever done that?
We have an estimate done by Truex Collins, one of the architects that has done a number of work for us on how to move the central office into one of our buildings. And it is substantially more expensive than had we purchased the current space. Bear in mind that to do this, you have to you can't just safety of students as a paramount driver for a central office. So to have a central office that's open to the public, that is also in a school, which means that it's now open for anybody to come into the school outside of the safety structure that that's required by the state of Vermont, requires us to spend an awful lot of money to build a structure, an infrastructure that allows for a central office and a school in the same building. You don't see a lot of them because they're very different in how they work. And the idea that, well, let's just put up some some room dividers and we'll have a bunch of offices. And I would say, yeah, that seems like a simple solution. And I would be unbelievably uncomfortable to go in and talk about my child's special needs in an open environment like that. Right? So
yes, no, I understand.
having some offices is important. And the cost of turning a classroom into offices is expensive.
Yes, I don't disagree. I just think I personally, even though I think you make great points and you're very educated on the matter, I just that's my main concern. I'm so sorry. I feel like there are ways to work with what we have, right? Everything's very expensive in the world. Everyone's, tight. We've all seen the effects of inflation. And when that applies right to the school, that does seem like an honest, concern to, well, can't we just work with what we have? Do we have to buy that building? Like, how do we make this work instead of, like you said, it's not just teachers, although that was my understanding, but cutting the staff direct to working with the kids.
Well, Shannon, I am all ears. Any idea on how we might be able to create a central office that that is workable in our budget? I'm in, and recognize that 4 years ago when we started this process, we looked at an awful lot of options on what we might be able to do. And I'm open to revisiting any of them. And I'll look forward to opening an email from you with an idea and reading it.
Sure thing.
And I don't mean that facetiously or tongue in cheek. We recognize great ideas can come from a lot of places.
Right.
We have a very resourceful community that wants us to be successful.
Yes, definitely.
Lloyd, there's a question in chat. Wanda asks, my concern is safety in cutting health services when we have many students with what we call acuity, or in layman's terms, health needs each day, sometimes several times a day. The job is too much at the high school and middle school with one nurse, not safe and concerning. Second, there are some positions within the central office that could be reduced without naming names or positions. Third, we have 3 administrators in our elementary school in Bristol. This seems a bit over the top. Fourth, we have 3 administrators and several behavioral interventionists at Mount Abe, with students being at the top of the infraction list and no real solutions. Just a few thoughts.
Spectacular.
Yeah, thank you so much. And what I'm hoping will come from this, because I'm not scribing all of the comments that I'm hearing right now, is it really is meaningful to get this into the survey, because I think we can create a really good FAQ. We did that this spring when a lot of questions and ideas came up. We did find a lot more information all the way down to salaries and central office. So, but it was a very short time frame to come up with and to ask for answers to these questions to be made. And we weren't even able at that point to dive in as deep on all of the ideas as we had hoped to. So I'm excited to hear the ideas coming up again tonight, and I'm looking forward to following up and following through with more information about these while we're not in the crisis moment later on in the year. This is a time when these questions we can look at what we already have as a board, what we've already been given, look at updating what we have, and address these concerns to the best of our ability. And I really appreciate the problem-solving ideas. And I think a lot of them will be things that we've talked about before, but you never know where a new idea might come from. So please share. Thank you. And then we have a couple questions in the room, but I would like Zoom participants to get a chance to go through. Meredith.
Meredith, are we capturing those questions in the chat?
I think I just read one out, but I'm not 100% sure that the people in the room heard what I read out. Did you all hear me read?
We did. Yeah.
What?
We did hear that, yes.
Okay, the comment from Wanda.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Morgan also had a question on how moving central office into Beaman would be that expensive. And I think you answered that when you were discussing with Shannon.
Want to stop sharing? There's my screen, Meredith, and bring it back to you.
Sounds great. So Liz, I know you had put a couple of questions out in the invitation. Do you think it would make sense to spend some time discussing them now?
Yes, we've got 20 minutes until the meeting is.
And Liz, you're on mute. You're a little difficult to hear for those of us on Zoom.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So sorry about that. Better?
Yes, better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
We were having such a great discussion in our breakout room that wanted to let that continue. I'm assuming the rest of you had some pretty great discussions in your breakout rooms too. So last minute closing thoughts on just everything we've discussed tonight. Yes, nod.
I would just like to request that I know the Community Engagement Committee is probably initially built to help engage the community. So openness, I think, is a big part of it. And I would like to see more frequent activity on Front Page Forum, like links to that budget that was presented. Maybe some other things. I think Liz, in Front Page Forum, there were 3 links to the meeting, 3 different meetings tonight. And I'm wondering if, I mean, maybe I wanted to go to one of the other ones also. Are they always going to be at the same time? The finance, the policies, and the community engagement. And also, I'd like to comment, I think Liz sent in that link to the community engagement, she did a bullet list of items. It would be great on Front Page Forum to have a bullet list of just points that were brought up in the meeting, because nobody likes to click a link to go to meeting minutes, even though still post those, still post the link. And if there are video links, also post that in the Front Page Forum, so that if somebody actually wants to listen at their free will in their free time, they can just do that.
Absolutely. A great call out, Nod. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I am our newest board member. It is my understanding that all subcommittees meet on the same date at the same time. Somebody who has more knowledge than me, please correct me if I'm wrong.
You are correct. At this time we do. We are I know the Community Engagement Committee has looked at meeting on different evenings. And that is something that we can put on our agenda and start to try to shift and transition that. Thank you for all of those suggestions and ideas to be more effective.
Any other closing thoughts? Well, thank you so much, everyone. I am so grateful to all of you for your candor and for the genuine care that you've shown for our students and our community and our residents in our towns. I don't want to speak for the full board, but I'm sure that my colleagues are feeling some similar sentiments. We are excited to dive deeper into the budget planning process with you all, and there will be more to come.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.